Okay. Zok Gemara. I just want to start with mentioning that today is the yard site of Reb Meir Shapira, Zecher Tzaddik Barucha, who was the founder of Daf Yomi. So I guess we should say that our learning should be a little bit Ilnish Basai. Let me just get his exact name. His name was Reb Meir, Rabbi Yehuda Meir. Let's see if I have his father's name. I don't have his father's name. But his first name was Rabbi Yehuda Meir. I don't know who he was the son of, but he's the Neshama should have an Aliyah. And also there was a Yid, Mr. Yosef Rosenberger, who he was the one who started the awareness for avoiding wearing clothing with shatnez. In America, nobody used to be concerned about it, and the mitzvah shatnez sort of got forgotten. So he founded the Shatnez Laboratory. I don't know if you remember, he used to go to Shatnez Laboratory, and he used to advertise in the Jewish magazines. Today for need, when Shatnez, yeah? In other words, you want to be a frum Yid, you have to be makar Shatnez. So he wrote in his will the following: due to the fact that I spent all my years educating the Jewish public about Shatnez, and therefore couldn't learn enough Torah, I am requesting the public learn Torah from our neshama, which I will consider as repayment for my years of devotion. Yosef ben Moshe Alevi. So today's learning should also be Ilu Nishmas of Yosef ben Moshe Alevi, who was Mazaka Klal Yisrael with being concerned about wearing Shabbos. Zok Tehelig Mishnah on Daf Kuf Lamed Vav Amud Aleph. Hakoshev Nechas of Levant. Somebody who wrote over his nechasim to his children. And the Rishbam explains, it's a bori sheroitza lisa isha. This is what we call a prenup. He wants to marry another woman. He wants to marry a second wife. And there's an estate there. And his kids told him, you're not marrying a second wife. Something happens to you, we're going to lose all the money. He doesn't want to be mishabed his nechasim to his wife. So never mind yarshin them, he doesn't even want that his nechasim to be subject to seizure to pay for her ksuba should their marriage disintegrate. Because this way his children that he has from his first wife are going to lose out. So therefore, what he does is before he gets married, he impoverishes himself. He wants to give everything that he owns to his kids before he marries, but he's going to have the right to eat the Paris while he's still alive, so he'll have full use of his assets while he's alive. It's impossible that she knows. She's marrying him.
Oh, she thinks that he does.
Of course she does. And he's keeping the kid in Paris, so it's business as usual. And then after their marriage disintegrates, she finds out that he outsmarted her. See, this doesn't even have to be a prenup. He's allowed to give everything to his children without even letting his wife know. So if you want to do this, then you have to use the wording. If I just say I want my nechasim to go to the children after I die, that's useless because it's a masna mashakos. It has to start now. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. So let's see the Rishbam how this kinyan is structured. The mashma you own the gufa karka immediately. That's a kinyan that's done right now in his lifetime. He can give a matana to anybody he wants in his lifetime. And then the kinyan that you have will expand. After I die, it will expand to also include the achilas haperes, which I want to retain for myself until I die. If he didn't say the word mehayoim, he just says, I want to give it to you la'achem isasi, loy nasan lahem klum. There's no validity to that transaction. The ein matana la'achem isa. You can't give something away after you die. Once someone is dead, he is separated from his assets, and he can no longer be makneh him. So the nusach of the nesina, the nusach of the shtar, is mehayoim ula'achamisa. Rabbi Yosy Omer ein itzara. You don't have to say mehayoim ula'achamisa the Gemara will explain that it's self-understood under certain conditions that it's Mehayoim L'Achamisa. Now let's go back and analyze how this transaction would work. The son is kohen the guf now, but he will not have access to the payers until his father dies. So the halacha is so if someone did this transaction, while the father is alive up until the time he dies, he can't sell it. You know why he can't sell it? Because he doesn't own the guf hakaka. He only owns the payers. The ben cannot sell it at that point because the father now has the payers. The Rashbam speaks out, if together they both sell their interests, yes, then it'll be a good sale. What if the father did sell his portion? So he has payers now. So the halach is muchur machiyamas. Whatever schus payers he had to eat from now until he dies, that's what the purchaser will have. And then once the father dies, the purchaser loses everything because now everything transfers over to the son. What about Machar Aben? The son doesn't have payers, he only has a kina guf. Ein lekech ben klum ach yamasah. So the lekech is in the place of the son. What will the son have? He has a kina guf, which doesn't give him all that much while his father's alive. But as soon as his father dies, just like the son would get all the payers, so too the purchaser would get all the payers. The Gemara is going to discuss if the son has to be alive when his father dies, or even if he dies before his father dies, would he still be there to transfer it over to the lekech? Zok the Gemara, what magic does these words of mehayoim ul achamisa, what does that accomplish? And yesterday, Avigdor asked me about a get situation, and I told Avigdor the Gemara is going to talk about it later, and I thought it would be later yesterday, but it's really today. So now we're getting to that Gemara. My have it. So Hatnan we learned. What if someone said exactly those same words when giving a get? I'm giving you a get, mehayoim ul achamisa. The halacha is it's a suffix, it's a get, the ain't no get. And therefore, if he dies and he has no siblings and no children, she can't do yibum because she might be mugareshes. But she can't do nothing because she might be an almana who has a zikah to yibum. So therefore, chaylet says, v'loy mishebet. Now, what is the issue with me'ayom ul achamisa? Because hasa misafkalam, me'ayom ul achamisa. There's one of two ways to decipher what exactly this seemingly schizophrenic is trying to do. Itna hava. If it's a t'nai, then mehayoim ul achamisa, if it's a t'nai, which means really I want to get to be chal right now, amanas that I die later. That would be a perfectly good get. Or ichazara hava. Maybe he said mehayoim, I changed my mind. I don't want to get to be mehayoim. I want to get to be only lachamisa. That won't work because you can't give a get lachamisa. So depending on what he meant, and we don't know what he meant, his get might be valid or his get might not be valid. So over here too, me'ayom ul achamisa should be the same thing. Zok Gemara has a very big difference. Here we have a third way that we could explain his words. This third alternative does not exist by get. And what is our third alternative? Gufa kani mehayoim. He's splitting his assets. And he's saying the guf of my assets you get right now. But payra la'achamisa. There's no such way to explain the words mehayoim la'achamisa by a get. So therefore it could only mean one of two things. Here we have a third alternative, which makes sense to incorporate his whole statement, and that's why we say it works. Because it's a legitimate way to explain what he wanted. Rabbi Yosy Omer Eitzar. So the question is, if you don't have to say Mehayoim ul achamisa, if you just say Harei Matanach, or my assets go to you la'achamisa, how could that possibly work? Rabbi Bar Avua Cholosh. Rabbi Bar Avua was not feeling it. All legabei Rav Huna v'Rav Nachman. Huna and Rav Nachman decided that they wanted to visit Rabbi Bar Avua. So Amalei Rav Huna Rav Nachman. Rav Huna turned to Rav Nachman and said, "Do me a favor. When we go into Rabbi Bar Avua, ask him the following question: Boy minei halachic Rabbi Yosy or ein halachic Rabbi Yosy? ask him, do you have to speak out mehayoim ulachamisa, or could you just say, this is a matana to you after I die? So Rav Nachman responded to Rav Huna, Amar lei, Talmud Rabbi Yosy lo yadana. I don't even understand his svara. How that could possibly work? Halachi boiminei. I should ask him if the halacha is like him if I don't even understand the svara. Amar lei, so Rav Huna responded, you don't worry about this. At boiminei I halacha ilai. You ask the shaila if the halacha is like Rabbi Yosy, the time and the reasoning for Rabbi Yosy, I'm not amino. I'll already tell you. I don't understand what happened over here. I would have asked yourself. Could be Rabbi Huna wanted to get Rabbi Nachman involved. He wanted to get him involved. So what happened was Boimine. So of course Rabbi Nachman did ask Rabbi Baravua, do we pass like Rabbi Yosy? Amalei Hachi Amar Rav. So Rabbi quoted from Rav, Halacha Rabbi Yosy. So now that we know we pass like Rabbi Yosy, now we need to understand how could this possibly work. Amar Lei, Hainu Taimu Rabbi Yosy. Rav Huna told Rav Nachman, you would like to know the explanation of Rabbi Yosy? The Amar Zmanoi Sal Star Mechiachalo. Why in the world did you put a date on the star? If you're saying I'm giving to you after I die, so then after you die, it's yours. Why did you date it? The fact that you put a date on the star shows that you want it to be chal from today. Tani Namichachi, Rabbi Yosy Omer, Eine Tzorech Mepnei, Shezmanoi Shal Star Mechiachalo. Let's see the Rashbam, because he does elaborate a little bit on this shaila. Oh, no, he doesn't speak about it at all, actually. I was mixing it up with the previous Rashbam. So that, no, he doesn't say anything. So Vibalt is a Zman on the star, and there's no reason to have this Zman on the star. That in and of itself proves that he wanted it to work that way. Okay. So Frek the Gemara, up until now, we were talking about a star matan. Nechasai nesunin loch la'acher misasi. That's what the star said, but it had a date on it, today's date. So Zok Rabbi Yosy, that's built in the svara of, since there's a zman in the star, obviously why did I put the zman there if it wouldn't be necessary? I put it there so that you should know that I want the gufa kaka to be nikna to the makabel right now. So boy when they rav nachman, what if I said this should be niknas to you like in a sale contract, not a gift contract? As the Rashbam says, b'hakna ma'u b'shtar shekosav by kinyan. If the star has a lashon kinyan in it, mi polig Rabbi Yehuda u'matrich l'michtav mayom. Rabbi Yehuda holds that yes, there's a date on the star, but you still need to speak it out more clearly. If you say I'm giving this to you, and you're not saying it should be chal me'ayoim, even though there's a date on the star, we're not going to say that automatically means that you're saying me'ayoim. But what if I write in the star, I want you to be kohen to this because I'm selling it to you, that has a lashon kinyan in it, maybe since that's a stronger lashon, maybe there Rabbi Yehuda would agree to Rabbi Yosy that Zman Shal Star Mechiachalo. And Vibalt, a lashon kinyan, is a stronger lashon, maybe Rabbi Yehuda would be agreeable to Rabbi Yosy that Zman Shal Star Mechiachalo, and you don't have to speak out mehayoim. The Ikal Meimar, the Bishtar Matana B'loy Kinyan Pli. Maybe where does Rabbi Yehuda argue and say that you have to articulate beferish mehayoim? That's if the star doesn't have a lashon kinyan in it. To go in Chikos of Sodan in Sunalach lachamisa, and then the Moshe is a star. And we know Kakar is Niknas B'Kesef for B'Shtar B'Chazak because he gave him the Shabbat. It doesn't say right in the star you should be koine. It just says in the Sunalach. Maybe if he said you should be koine, maybe that's a stronger lashon, and therefore even if Yehuda would agree that Zmanoi shall star Mechiachalo. So Amar Lei, so Rav Nachman responded to Rava, B'Hakna Einay Tzar. In fact, Rabbi Yehuda would taka agree that on a star of a Mechir where it says the lashon kinyan in the star, there in fact, you wouldn't have to write Me'ayon. Rav Papa says it depends. Ika Knisa the Tzarech. Sometimes, depending on the wording, you have to say Me'ayon. the Ika Knisa the Loitzar. And he elaborates. Akniya v'kanina minei, that's Loitzar. Kanina minei v'aknaya tzar. So the Rishbam explains that the way a star is normally written is the Adam on the star say, we were instructed to be koina this, to be zoiche in this, on behalf of the Makabel, and then we did it. So there's two things that were said. The first thing, we were instructed to do so, and then we did it. So it says as follows: Akniya, if the star says we were instructed by the Baal to make this kinyan, and later on at the end of the star, they're not together. At the end of the star, when it sums it all up, it says the kanina mine. So the fact that it said we were instructed to do the kinyan, and we did the kinyan, that would mean that it was chal me'ayoim, and it wouldn't have to say me'ayoim in it. However, kanina mine, vakanya, if we write at the beginning of the star, we made the kinyan, and we were told to make a kinyan, so it's like it only said it once, because we made the kinyan. Which kinyan did we make? The kinyan that we were told to make, tzarech, that would still require specifically stating me'at. Now let's have a look in the Rishbam, because he elaborates on how the star is written. Akniya v'kinyan minei tzarech, zeu shekosen b'chol star shekosen by kinyan shnei kinyan. A normal star of kinyan has in it two lashonis of kinyan. Echad b'tchilas star. One would be at the beginning of the star, and this is what it would say: the kach omer lonu, the giver, called Moshe the giver, told us to follow. Havu olai edim, be edim for me, v'kanu mimeni, and be kind of from me on behalf of the person who I want to give it to, the kisu v'chitzbu, and then write a star attesting to that fact and sign. V'hainu akniya, that's the notion of akniya, meaning shehikna le'edim b'kidin sudar, liskois boy le'mekabel matan. It means he was makna to the edim using a kinyan sudar, so that they could be kind on behalf of the intended recipient. And then again, the echad b'soifa star, it says that kanina min ploini leploini. We actually did as instructed, kechol ma the kosov, exactly what's written in Mefurish Loyal in the star. Kedom the command beget poshet, like the Gemara will tell us later. Sarach sheyachzer mein yonesh al star b'shita achrein. The loch is when you write a star, in the last line, you do a summary of all that was stated in the star. And therefore, in Kosev Barosh Star Akniya, which is the instructions that we got from the Noisein, that would indicate a strong interest in transmitting this gift, the Mashna Shnei Kinyonim. It's almost Mashna that there's two Kinyonim here. Who Hikna? He was Makne, the Bailam was Makne, the Gam Anu Kaninu Mimenu, and we bought it from him, and we got it from him. That's a very strong expression. The Kinyan Yisera, who Yifui Koyach Liknois Maya. The fact that it reviews the Kinyan again, that is a Yifu Koyach. Aval, however, if you configure the star differently, Aval Kosa Barosha star, first Vikanina, meaning first we're writing this is what we did, and then Ubesoifa Aknia, and at the end they write, because this is what we were instructed, Mashma Kinyan Echad. That only sounds like it's one Kinyan. The Perusha Kamafarish, the Kanina Minei, where the Aknia, which means the instructions from the Noisen to be Kaina, is just explaining what it said earlier in the star. We were Kaina from him. You know why? Because the Kanina, because he instructed us to. Therefore, V'heich, Shara Hikna Lanu, the Perusha Kamafarish for Kanina Minei, V'heich, how did we Kaina from him? Shara Hikna Lanu, because he instructed us to be Kaina from him. The Yomar Kach V'kach Ani Noisen L'Plain. Kei Nira Shitazu V'einaivu. So therefore, depending on how you express the order of the star, it would or would not require a mayata. The only issue we have is the Tosfos asks a very important question. That is, we all know that there's a rule of the tzorech sheyachzor min yonish star b'shita achroin. you always have to review everything in the last line. But there's also halacha, the kasha, the ha'ein lemeidin mishita achrayna. There's a halacha that you can't learn anything, any new thing from the shita achrayna. It can only be a review. The way the Rashbam is learning, and the way you have to learn from this Gemara is you learn a lot from the Kanina Menach, because what you're learning is that he wants to do it mayato, according to Rabbi Yehuda, according to this tzad. Remember, this is only according to Rabbi Yehuda. According to Yosy, anyway, we say Zman and Shoshtar Mechich Alav, no matter what. Gezok Gemara weiter. Maske v'lo Rab Chanina Misur. I'm sorry? Oh, he doesn't. You talk about the bottom. The Rashbam did not learn the Mishnah in one shot. The Rashbam broke up the Mishnah, and he has the second half of our Mishnah later on. So really, if you noticed, the Rashbam goes to the Gemara in the middle of the Mishnah. Yeah, the Rashbam goes to the Gemara in the middle of the Mishnah and then goes back to the second half of the Mishnah. So the Rashbam might have had a girsa where our Mishnah was split into two, and the second half of the Mishnah was later on. Was at the bottom. Okay. Let's see the Gemara weiter. Let's see the Gemara weiter. Frank the Gemara, I don't understand. Maska for Rab Chanina Misura. Here, the Rabbanan are discussing the halacha. What would be, according to Rabbi Yehuda, by a shtar akna, if he didn't say mayata, or mehayim, but he used these different lashonis, and we're lumdiving around. We're discussing yes, no, which means the Rabbanan themselves aren't clear what these expressions might mean. So, Frak the Gemara, mi kamidi, danan lo yedinan. We're not even sure about what the halacha is. But the Safri Yodi, you're telling me that the Soifrim obviously know to write things in a certain way because that would indicate if it is me'ayoyim or if it's not me'ayoyim. We're clearing about it. They're going to know. Zok to Gemara, absolutely. The Soifrim might know the understanding and the meaning of these stories more than we ourselves do. Shalunu the Sifri Abaye v'yadi. They asked the Soifrim that worked by Abaye's bezin, and they all knew, of course, if you write it this way, that indicates that he wants to do mayayim. Yeah, you don't know that. The Safri the Rava v'yadi. So the professionals might know more than those who supervise them. Anybody in the construction industry will know that quite clearly, that the professionals who do construction, they know constructions. The inspectors, they're more familiar with obstruction. And often people who never made it in the trades become inspectors, and then they have a massive chip on their shoulders as they're inspecting other people's work. And from time to time, you get somebody who's knowledgeable. I was waiting for a Victor to comment. I'm trying to provoke them. Rav Huna, Rav Yeshua Omar. Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yeshua, said, Bein akniya v'kanina minei, bein kanina minei v'akniya loitzar. In other words, I'm not going to get so detailed. If there's like a double lashon there, I'm not going to analyze it like we did in the Rashbam. If he says this way, it's like 2 kinyan. If it's that way, it's like 1 kinyan. Any time, if you use both those lashonis, that's an indication that it means me'ayim. That's by a shtar kinyan. So where would there be a difference between how you wrote it? Ubeduchran piskomi the have bantana by stories that aren't really talking about a kinyan. It's merely relating events. What occurred? That's where it would make a difference as to how the star was written. Let's have a look at the Rashbam. Star ages below kinyan. It's merely a star ages that doesn't say anything about kinyan in it. Zichron dvarim, v'lo zichron kinyan. It's not talking about a kinyan. There, it would make enough kamina how you wrote it. So Zok the Rashbam, this shita is v'hanu krab nachman the amar hakna in itzar. Right? Since this sheet is saying no matter how it was written, akniya yes, akniya no, it doesn't make a difference if you write it twice, once. Automatically, every star kinyan automatically is a good star, and it means mehayoim, as Rab Nachman originally said before a puppy said it depends. Rab Nachman said across the board, any star kna doesn't need mehayoim. The only type of star that would need mehayoim is if it's not a star kinyan, it's just a star recording events. I shared this whole discussion with Rav Zidmi that there was a question how to treat a star knah, and Rav Nachman said it's always considered me'ayoim, even according to Rav Yehuda. And Rav Pavi said it depends. I discussed this with him. You actually recorded the whole situation as a shaila that was brought from Rava to Rav Nachman, and then that prompted the whole discussion. There was a shaila about it. I never had a shaila. Anan haki masninula. Amar Rava, Amar Rav Nachman. There's no shaila here. Rava just stated outright. Bakna ein tzarech bein akniya v'kanina minei bein kanina mei v'aknei loy tzarech. Even according to Yehuda, you don't have to say me'ayoyim by a star kinyan. V'duch in Piskami, the Havib Anfana Pligi, that's where it would make a difference how it was written, if it means me'ayoyim or not. Okay, Gavalt. Now, before we do the next Gemara, we should really learn the Rashbam on the Mishnah. So the Mishnah now is discussing what happens when you do a kinyan like this of me'ayoyim ula chamisa. At what point does the kinyan pairs transfer? At what point is the kinyan gov transfer? What point of them sell it? How that would work? So the Rashbam says as follows: Hakaishav nechasav l'bnoi hudin lacher. It doesn't make a difference if it was son. It could have been anyone. Lacher moisi moisai hainu me'ayoyim ula chamisa. Right, that's what we're discussing. Ha'aveni yochalimkar la'achar haguf va'peris lagamri. The father can't sell it because it doesn't belong to him. If they shaksuvim leben haguf me'achshav, because the guf belongs to his son right now, who peris la'achar misa. So he surely cannot sell that he does not have. But the ben can either sell it completely, he can only sell what he has ownership of at this point. But they can get together and sell it, because if each one is giving up their part, that translates into a total ownership being transmitted, being sold. So Av Yimker Peres, Av Ben Yimker Guf. Machar Av. So this is where we have to focus. Machar Av. Stama, the father Stam sold it. Without getting into detail. What does the Lekech receive? Mechurin lePeresein leLekech Achiyamasa. Just like the father had the right to eat the pears from this field up until his death, now the Lekech who purchased that schus from him gets that schus. Aval Chashiyamasa. Once the father dies, Yitel Haben, Gam Guf, Gam Peres. The Ben now gets everything, and the Lekech is gone. Oyhu, either the son himself, or the Yerush of the son, or the purchaser from the son. But whatever it is, now everything transfers to the son. It doesn't matter if first the father died, and the son was still alive, so that he could take it over. Even if the son died first, and then the father died, he still gets the guf and the peris upon the death of his father. And if he's not there, his son will get it. All the father sold to the lekeach was the peris, nothing else. The son got the guf akaka right away. So even if the son died before the father, his son, his Yerush, now is in control of that guf that the son had. And when the son dies, meaning the son died and now the father died. The son died and then the father died. Meaning there is no son to be kind of the guf and the pairs, but his Yerush who stands in his place will do that for him. So if there are children, they stand in his place. But what if the son sold his chelik while the father was alive? The lekeach will acquire the guf hakaka right now because that's what the son has. But he won't have the right to eat pears until the father dies, because the lekeach bought exactly the same schos that the son had. Once the father dies, guf pears. The lekeach will get both. Now here's where it's going to get tricky. The only time we say that the lekeach gets exactly what the son would have gotten which is the guf and the payers after the father dies, that's only if the son was alive when the father died. Avol mesaben, what if the son died before the father? V'achach mesav, look to Hebrew Gemara. That's going to be the subject of today's Gemara in Kanal Lakeach Emla. So let's just stop a second. If the son died before the father and he didn't sell it, the grandson will get exactly what his father got. He stands in place of his father and will be clear the guf and the payers. But if the son sold it, the loikeach is not like the son of the son who gets whatever his father is supposed to get. Loikeach might not get it. So that it might not be a good sale, and that's the discussion. The Yerush for sure gets everything, but maybe the loikeach won't get it. And the reason is because since I only had a kinyan guf and not a kinyan payers, maybe I didn't have enough to sell. Maybe I didn't have enough control over the property to sell it. Okay. I could sell it, and if I would survive, it would work. So the Gemara is going to. So let's see the Gemara. Hakosav nechasav lebnei lachamoisa. Itmar mocher haben b'chayayav umeis haben b'chayayav. Exactly the shadow that the Rishbam told us the Gemara was going to ask. What is Allah? Rabbi Yochanan says, Loi kana loikeach. Loikeach would not be kind. For Shlokish Amar kana loikeach, loikeach would be kind. What is the machloik is totally in? What does it hinge upon? Rabbi Yochanan Amar Loi kana loikeach, because kinyan payers kegina guftam. The kinyan payers that the father has in his lifetime is a very strong control over the property, perceived as a kinyan guf, which would prevent the mechira from transferring to the loikeach. For Shlokish Amar kana loikeach, because kinyan payers lavka kinyan guftam. Let's see the response. Even when the father dies, where now everything that the father had transfers to the son, it doesn't go to the loikeach. You know why? These nechasim were never royal to come to the son. Why? Because he sold them. They're going to go back to the Shar Yor Shayav. So it's more than that. It doesn't go to the son's son. That son who sold his chaylik loses everything. And it goes back up to the grandfather and redistributed to the Yershay of the grandfather. What if the son didn't sell? There, Rabbi Yochanan would agree. There, even if the son died before the father, so this is very puzzling. If the son yarshins it even after he dies to give it to his son, so why doesn't he yarshin it after he dies to give it to the loikeach? What's the difference between his son who's yarshining him and the loikeach who's getting what he sold him? Either way, he should be entitled to get whatever the son got. Since he sold it, we say the fact that he sold it removes himself from it. If he just dies, his son yarshins it because he never removed himself from this asset. It's his, and therefore his son will yarsh. But if he sold it, that's called he removed himself from this asset. And the gam loy boliyodoi, and it never reached his hand in actuality because he died before his father did. So So since when he sold it, he was masalik himself from it, and he wasn't there to catch it when his father died, the lekech doesn't get anything because he doesn't have anything to transmit at that point. In Achayvel and Bava Kama, the Gemara gets into detail to explain this machlokes. Rabbi Yochanan I'll tell you as follows: Kika tani masnisin machar aben ein lekech achiyamos ha'av. The Mishnah says if the son sells it, lekech doesn't get anything until the father dies. And we're medayik haki mayis mashma that when the father does eventually die, is leili lekech. The lekech would get it. The loy meisa ben b'chayav. That's only because the son was alive at the time that his father died. The osalahu liyadei deben. They actually came to the son's hands as a fulfillment of the father's gift of mehayoy mulachem isa, and now it could transfer to the lokeach. Avol meisa ben b'chayav. But if the son died while the father was still alive, the karka never reached the actual possession of the son. Kimayas av nami less. Therefore, even once the father died, since it never reached the hands of the son, it will not go to the lakech. Alma, what do you see from here? That kinyan perish kikina guftam. The kinyan perish that the father had was like a kinyan guf, and we say it didn't come to the hands of the son yet. When the son sold it, he really didn't sell a property that he had enough of a grasp in yet, and therefore the mechira is not valid. You know why? And we make a dia, that's an all occasion. It doesn't make a difference if the son was alive at the father's death, where the field actually came to him, but this would still apply if the son died before the father, where even though the whole karka never came to the hands of the son because he wasn't alive, it doesn't change the fact that the lakech will still be kohen. You see, the kinyan pairs that the father had doesn't take away from the kinyan that the son had in the life of his father, and therefore his sale is a good sale. So that's the shaila of kinyan pairs kinyan. For the Gemara, why do we need this Gemara to tell us that Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish argue about what the deal would be with this karka based on kinyan pairs kinyan? We already know that they have a machlokes if kinyan pairs kinyan. Once we know that there's that machlokes, we can obviously apply that principle to any place in the Torah. Why do I need you to spoon feed me and tell me that their machlokes is relevant here? Once I know they have such a machlokes, on my own I could apply it to this case. We already know from another case that Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish argue about this. The itmar, if you sell your son not the gufa karka, but you tell somebody you can have my field, you could rent my field, and you'll get the pairs, but the gufa karka is mine. So do you bring bikurim and do you say the parsha bikurim? Rabbi Yochanan maybe vikayre. The renter could bring bikurim from the pairs, and he could say al hadama asher nosatali, the land that you gave me, because a kinyan of pairs is like nosatali. Rish Lakish Amar maybe ve'enoi kayre. You bring bikurim because it grew from the ground, but you can't say asher nosatali. Rabbi Yochanan maybe vikayre because kasaver kinyan pairs kinyan guftam, and the fact that you have a kinyan pairs in the field is like you own it. For Rish Lakish Amar maybe ve'enoi kayre because kinyan pairs lav kinyan guftam. So the question is, from that discussion that they had by bikurim, we know what their position is. We could automatically adapt that to our shaila over here. So why was it necessary for the Gemara to repeat this shaila over here as well? That's not true. Even though I already told you that I hold kinyan perish kikina guf, and I already told you that a renter could say the parsha of bikurim, it wouldn't necessarily translate to the same halacha over here where a son sold his property. Here I needed to tell you that it applies here as well. Who is the son getting it from? Who has the kinyan peiros? Who has the kinyan peiros here that's preventing the son from taking complete ownership? The father. A father loves a son. The father is much forgiving, so he won't exert his kinyan aguf to take away from his son's. So he won't exert his kinyan peiros to take away from his son's kinyan aguf. So maybe there you wouldn't say kinyan peiros kinyan aguf, and maybe there the son's mechira will be a good mechira. Kamash Malan, that even in this case with Yerusha, the kinyan peiros is kinyan aguf, and the father does retain through the kinyan peiros a strong stake in the property that prevents the mechira. Even though I hold kinyan peiros lav kinyan aguf, and therefore I say a renter cannot say the parsha of bikurim because he cannot say asher nasatali. Here I would say it's different. The solkadait achamina kol legabe nafshei afilu b'makom berei nafshei adifim. in the case of Bikurim, I'm giving you the Kenyan pairs, and that's all I'm giving you. But over here it's much worse, because over here, whatever you get is coming from me. So forget you're my son, that's all fine and dandy, but not when it's affecting me myself. And when it's me myself, I'm going to be much more inclined to retain more of an ownership to myself. And therefore, even though anywhere else I might say Kenyan pairs lavka Kenyan aguftami, but when it's a question of me giving away my property, there I'm going to be much more protective, and I'll be holding on tight, even though it's my son. So Kamash Malon, that's why they once again have to reiterate their positions. Rabbi Yochanan, Kenyan pairs Kenyan aguf, Rish Lakish Kenyan pairs lav Kenyan aguf. They have to reiterate their positions in this sugi as well. Eisei Rabbi Yochanan Rish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan challenged Rish Lakish. You're telling me that Kenyan pairs is lav Kenyan aguf? Well, let me ask you a question. We have a famous case that we discussed several times. Nechasai lach, I'm giving my nechasim to you. Yacharecha, and after you die, yarish ploni. Reuben should yarshin it. Yacharev, and after Reuben dies, yarish ploni. Shimon should yarshin. And the Brisa says, what is the halacha? Meis rishon. If the first person dies, that was the nichsei lach. I didn't give him a name. Kana sheni, then Reuben will be kind. Meis sheni, if Reuben dies. Kana shlishi, then Shimon will be kind. The Brisa goes on and says, Meis sheni b'chaye rishon. What if the sheni died b'chaye rishon? So that means that Shimon died while Reuben was still alive. So therefore, they can't. I'm sorry. Sheni Reuben died while the first person was still alive, which means we were never able to be Mekayim the Acharecha years Pliny, because Pliny wasn't around. Then Yachsru Nechosim LeYarsha Rishon. The Nechosim goes, the Nechosim go to the Yarsha Rishon, and they don't go back to they don't go to the Sheni. They got stuck there, because we say it's like a Tnai. The giver only wanted the Sheni to get it if the Rishon got it. Since the Rishon couldn't get it, the Sheni won't get it, but it'll stay by the Rishon's shoulder. Frank the Gemara, if you hold Kenyan pairs, lavke Kenyan aguftami, v'misa liyarshin noisin miboy, the whole thing should be bought. Why should the whole thing be bought? Very simple. If you hold Kenyan pairs Kenyan aguf, what did the first person receive? The first person received a Kenyan haguf, a Kenyan pairs, not a Kenyan aguf, right? Because when I'm giving it to you and I'm saying v'achrecha ploini, I'm not giving you the guf karka. Because if I give you the guf karka, there's nothing else for me to do. I'm only giving you a Kenyan pairs. And therefore, if I'm only giving you a Kenyan pairs and it doesn't work out, then the whole thing should be bottled and it should go back to the noise. Let's have a look. The halacha is Mesa Sheni. If the Sheni died, so let me rephrase the case so that we don't get confused. Someone told Ruvain, this is yours, I'm giving you this property. Yacharecha, after you die, I want it to go to Shimon, and v'yacharecha Shimon, it should go to Levi. The halacha is, if Shimon dies before Ruvain, it goes to the Yoshim it goes back to the Yoshim of Ruvain, right? It doesn't go further. Kloimar, when Reuben dies, Yarshav Yarshin Mikoichai, he will get it. You know why? If Shimon's not around, why doesn't it go to Levi? Because the Noisin didn't want it to go to Levi. He only gave it to Levi if it gets first through Shimon. The Loika Amar, L'Rishain, Nechasei Loch, the Acharecha LePloini, the Im Ein Ploini, and if Pliny is not around, then Yitnu LePloini Ashlish. Doesn't say that. Then it would go regardless. But since I just said Acharecha, it means I don't want it to go to Levi unless first it went through Shimon. Since Shimon wasn't Zoicha in it because he's not alive, Shlishi Nami Lo Yitna, he can't be coined either. El Yarsha Rishon Yershu, it's going to go back to the children of Reuben. Lemaisa, they never had a Kenyan aguf. Reuben never had a Kenyan aguf. If the Noitin told Reuben, I'm giving it to you, clearly he's only giving him a kinyan pairs. So how could you justify now even the kinyan guf coming back to Ruvain? Dr. Eshbam, afilu hachi. Even deina charecha kayim, since you can't be mekayim acharecha, because those people died, zachu yarsharishin begufu pairs. Everything stops. If everything stops, it stops where it was left off. It stopped by Ruvain. Couldn't go to Shimon because Shimon's not alive. So the whole sequence stops exactly where it is, and everything stays the way it is. Zok to Gemara. The Amit B'Shleima Kinyan pairs have a chosh of Kinyan Guf. If you hold Kinyan pairs of Kinyan Guf, so then we can at least say that Reuben got a Kinyan Guf in it because he had a Kinyan pairs. Makes sense why Reuben should get to keep it and his children should get to keep it, because when he had the Kinyan pairs in it, that was a very significant grasp on the karka. Sharia pairs Kanuyan loy. He had the right to eat the pears during that period of time. And we look at it, he has a very strong grasp on the property. So when he dies, it will in fact transfer to his children. Normally, when you're selling a field, if you only sell the pears, he doesn't get the guf. But here, as a recipient from someone who's dying, he will get the guf. Because there, Haini Mishum, the behedya pears machaloy loy guf. I said to pears, I'm renting you my field for the pears. I'm not giving you the guf. There, you don't get the guf. It's as if the owner of the property, when he rented out his property, said specifically, after your time period, your lease expires, everything comes back to me. But when someone is giving out something after his death, the original nation never retained anything for himself. He's dying. The way we have to look at this sequence is he gave the payers to the Rishon, and after the Rishon would die, he would give the payers to the Sheni, and after the Sheni would die, he would give the guf and the payers to the Shlishi, who's going to keep it permanently. The Chiv and the Ikatart, since there's two factors here. Number one, the Sheyesh LaRishon, Kinyan payers. The Rishon has a Kinyan pairs, Kinyan Aguf Tommy, which we say has the status of a Kinyan Aguf, according to Rabbi Yochanan. The Gam Silek HaNoisen Atzamay Miguf Upairs. Clearly, this Noisen is removing himself from the Guf and Pairs because in his succession, he's ultimately giving it to somebody completely. So he's removing his ownership from here. When you're renting a property, you're not removing your ownership. You're giving somebody a rental for a period of time and you're taking it back. Here, the end result is you're getting rid of it. You're removing yourself from this property completely. So the Gam Silak HaNoisen Atzamay Miguf Upairs Hilchach Yachsul Yarsharishan. The Rishon had a strong grasp in it. It makes sense. It should go back to him. Why should they go back to the Rishon? If the sequence stops, why would it park by the Rishon? The Rishon had nothing more than a temporary rental. How would he get to keep it? So according to Yerush Lakish, we should say the whole thing stops. The whole matan is bottled, and it goes back to the original guy. And if he dies, it goes to his children. So Zok to Gemara, you're right. If it's merely a regular case of giving it over to different people in succession, so Zok to Gemara, Amar Lei, so Rish Lakish answered, you don't have a cash. For Tirgama Rav Hoshia Bebavel Acharecha Shayim. Rav Hoshia said that when you use a lotion of Acharecha, it's very different. Acharecha is a much stronger lotion, and even if Kinin Paris Lav Kina Guptami, the lotion Acharecha is powerful. What does the Lashon Acharecha mean? Zok to Rashbam, Acharecha Shani, the Mashma, the Guf, Upeiros Nasan Larisha. When you use a Lashon of Acharecha, that means you're not just giving him a Kinyan Paris, you're giving him a Kinyan Haguf as well. We'll have to understand how that suddenly stops, right? Once I'm giving him the Guf and the Paris, how could I then transfer to the Sheni? But I'll call upon him, when you say Acharecha, it's Mashma, you're giving the Guf and the Paris to the Rishon, the Bahedya, Parish, Acharecha, Yirish, Pliny. Valese delirish. He's not here to Yash. Hilchach Yisharu b'Yad Yerush Rishon. That's why they'll stay in the Yad Yerush Rishon, because we consider the Rishon have had Saya Kinyan Aguf and Saya Kinyan Perish, because the Noisein used the terminology Acharecha. The Hachik Amar, this is what he means to say. All your life, Mr. Ruvain, Hakoil Shalach, it's yours completely. Hapri Vaguf. And whatever remains from this estate after you die, Yikabel Pliny, I want Pliny to get. Now we'll have to see how that can work mechanically. But that's what he's saying. But he's giving it completely to the Rishon. He's giving it completely to the Rishon, then you're not just giving him a Kenyan payers, you're giving him a Kenyan group as well. And therefore he get his Yarshim get to keep it. But the litmus test is the Maya writes a Rishon Yochel Limkar Haguf. Come on, we'll soon see that the Rishon could have sold it, and had he sold it, the Sheni would have got nothing. So you see, the Rishon has a strong grasp in it, and therefore, if the Sheni dies, it will stay by the Rishon. Okay, that's going to be tomorrow is going to be a little bit of a more complex sugya because we're going to get into the mechanics of how this system works.